the painful truth behind breadcrumbing is this. Avoidants don't give you crumbs because you're not enough. They do it because they are terrified of what being fully present would require from them. That's the part no one tells you. And that's why breadcrumbing hurts so much, because deep down, it makes you question your worth when the real issue never lived inside you in the first place. Breadcrumbing is the avoidance emotional survival strategy. They want connection, but only in small, controlled doses. They want you near, but not close enough to feel emotionally exposed. So they send tiny signals of affection, a text, a compliment, a moment of warmth, not to build a real relationship, but to soothe their own fear of losing you while avoiding the vulnerability of showing up fully. It's not love. It's not commitment, it's fear disguised as affection. And the most painful part? Breadcrumbing trains your nervous system to settle for emotional scraps. You start waiting for their next message like it's proof that you matter. You reinterpret every tiny gesture as something meaningful. You convince yourself that the crumbs are signs of progress, when really they're just signs of emotional paralysis. Avoidance breadcrumb because it allows them to feel safe, but it leaves you feeling empty, confused, and addicted to hope. Breadcrumbing is not about your value. It's about their fear of being truly seen, and until you understand that, you stay trapped in a cycle where you give everything and receive almost nothing in return. But once you see the truth clearly, everything shifts, because breadcrumbing only continues when you believe the crumbs are all you deserve. The moment you stop accepting them, the dynamic breaks instantly. Avoidants live with emotions they never speak out loud. Feelings so tangled, contradictory, and overwhelming that silence becomes their safest language. To the outside world, they look cold, distant, even unbothered. But internally, avoidants experience a storm they don't have the tools to express. And that storm shapes every mixed signal, every pull away, every breadcrumb you've ever received. Here's the truth they never say. I want you, but wanting you scares me. Avoidants crave closeness more than you think. They feel the warmth, the excitement, the safety of your presence. And that intensity triggers their deepest fear. What if I lose myself in this? What if I disappoint you? What if you get too close and see the parts I've spent years hiding? So instead of leaning in, they tense up, withdraw, or create space. Not because they don't care, but because caring feels dangerous. I don't know how to handle your emotional needs. Avoidants often carry childhood wounds where emotional closeness felt unpredictable, overwhelming, or unsafe. As adults, they freeze when someone wants deeper connection. They don't mean to be dismissive, they simply feel unqualified to meet your emotional expectations. Every conversation about feelings can feel like pressure they don't know how to navigate. I pull away because I'm scared of needing you. Depending on someone feels like vulnerability, and to an avoidant, vulnerability feels like losing control. So when the connection gets deeper, they withdraw not to punish you, but to protect themselves from getting attached. I notice your pain more than you think. Avoidants see your confusion, they feel your hurt, they recognize that their distance wounds you, but instead of addressing it, they retreat further, believing that staying silent is less damaging than saying the wrong thing. I stay quiet because I don't trust my feelings. Avoidants doubt their emotions, they second-guess attachments, they fear they will mess everything up, so they speak less, reveal less, and keep their heart behind an emotional lock they never learned to open. Yet for all their fear, avoidants still long for connection, deeply, quietly, secretly. The tragedy is this: they want love, but run from the very thing they desire. And the moment you understand this, you stop blaming yourself and start seeing their silence for what it truly is: unspoken fear, not lack of care. Breadcrumbing is not random, accidental, or harmless. It's a psychological pattern rooted in avoidance, fear, and emotional self-protection. At its core, breadcrumbing happens when someone wants connection, but fears the responsibility that real intimacy demands. So instead of fully showing up, they offer just enough attention to keep you emotionally present, without ever committing to genuine closeness. Psychologically, breadcrumbing is driven by intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. When affection is unpredictable, rare, and inconsistent, your nervous system becomes more attached, not less. You start chasing the high of the next message, the next compliment, the next tiny sign of affection. Meanwhile, the breadcrumbing partner stays comfortably in control, giving small doses of warmth that cost them nothing emotionally. Avoidants often breadcrumb because it allows them to maintain a sense of emotional safety. By offering crumbs, they avoid vulnerability, intimacy, and expectations, All the things that activate their underlying fear of being overwhelmed or exposed. But here's the painful truth. Breadcrumbing is a cycle that feeds on your hope and their fear. Understanding the psychology behind it is the first step to breaking free. Because once you see the pattern clearly, you stop mistaking crumbs for connection. Mixed signals feel confusing on the surface, but psychologically, they're one of the strongest forces that keep you emotionally locked into an avoidant partner. What makes mixed signals so addictive is not the affection itself, it's the unpredictability of it. When someone pulls you close one moment and pushes you away the next, your brain enters a state called intermittent reinforcement, a pattern that creates emotional addiction. You never know when the next warm message, sudden attention, or moment of closeness will arrive, but you keep hoping. That hope becomes the hook. Every time they show interest after days of distance, your nervous system gets a rush of relief. It feels like proof that they still care, even though the connection is inconsistent. This cycle trains your brain to value their crumbs more intensely than real affection from someone consistent. Mixed signals also awaken your desire for clarity. You're not just addicted to the person, you're addicted to seeking answers, trying to decode their behavior, trying to prove you're worthy enough for them to finally choose you fully. The more unpredictable they are, the harder you try. That's why mixed signals don't push you away. They pull you deeper into a cycle you don't even realize you're stuck in until you break it consciously. Avoidants may not test you intentionally at first, but their behavior naturally becomes a series of silent reactions checks, designed to protect themselves from emotional vulnerability. At their core, avoidants fear being overwhelmed, misunderstood, or trapped. So before they let you get closer, they observe how you respond to distance, inconsistency, and emotional gaps. One of the first tests is withdrawing suddenly. They pull back, delay replies, or go quiet just to see if you'll become anxious, chase harder, or pressure them emotionally. If you react with panic, intensity, or demands, it confirms their fear that closeness leads to overwhelm. But if you remain calm and self-contained, it feels safer for them. Another test is giving small crumbs of affection and watching whether you cling to them. If you accept the crumbs without expecting more, they believe you won't threaten their emotional boundaries. But if you ask for deeper connection, their defensive walls rise instantly. Avoidants also test how you handle uncertainty. They want to know whether you can stay steady without constant reassurance, because reassurance feels like responsibility to them. The truth is, avoidants aren't trying to manipulate you. They're trying to protect themselves from the vulnerability they were never taught to manage. The breadcrumb cycle doesn't begin when the avoidant pulls away. It begins the moment you respond to their inconsistency, as if it is real connection. That is the exact point where the pattern locks in, and you don't even notice it happening. It happens when they disappear for days, then send a tiny message like "Hey" or "Miss you," and you reply instantly, warmly, and with relief. That single moment teaches the avoidant two things. Relomteful, that you for na, but nor main tai beginnen mentioned the busel. You will always be there when they return. You feed the cycle every time you accept their crumbs as if they are commitment. You feed it when you adjust your needs to match their emotional minimum. You feed it when you mistake a small gesture for a big intention. Avoidants operate from fear, not malice, and crumbs allow them to stay close without ever facing the discomfort of true intimacy. When you respond eagerly to their sporadic affection, you reinforce their belief that this dynamic works. Minimal effort still keeps you emotionally invested. The painful truth is this: the breadcrumb cycle continues the moment you reward the crumbs, and the cycle ends the moment you stop treating crumbs like connection. The one move that stops breadcrumbing instantly is simple, powerful, and deeply uncomfortable for the avoidant. You stop responding emotionally to their crumbs and start matching your energy only to consistency, not sporadic attention. This is not about ignoring them or playing games. It's about breaking the reward system that keeps the breadcrumb cycle alive. Breadcrumbing survives because you respond with hope, excitement, or emotional investment every time they send a small, low-effort sign of interest. The moment you stop giving those crumbs emotional value, everything shifts. You respond calmly, neutrally, without chasing, without over-explaining, without rewarding the inconsistency. You shift from, "Thank you for the scraps," to, "I only engage with real effort." Avoidants feel this difference instantly. Your emotional detachment removes the comfort they rely on, the comfort of knowing they can pull away, return half-heartedly, and still keep you attached. When the crumbs no longer work, Avoidants face two choices: show up fully or disappear. Either way, you're free. This one move works because you're no longer feeding their fear-based pattern. You create an emotional boundary that says, consistency is the only language I respond to, and that's the moment breadcrumbing dies. Immediately. When you pull back from an avoidant, something profound happens internally, and it's often the exact opposite of what most people expect. Avoidants are wired to maintain emotional distance because closeness triggers fear. But when you create space, they can no longer control the connection or rely on the emotional safety net of your constant availability. This activates a mix of curiosity, anxiety, and self-reflection inside them. Suddenly, they notice your absence in ways they didn't when you were always there. They may begin to question their own actions, wonder if they took you for granted, or feel the subtle discomfort of missing the consistency they've unconsciously relied on. Pulling back forces them to confront their own avoidance patterns, because the usual breadcrumbing no longer guarantees your attention. Emotionally, this can trigger a shift from fear to longing. The avoidant may start evaluating what they truly want and whether they're willing to step outside their comfort zone to achieve real closeness. The vacuum you create acts like a mirror, reflecting both their fear of intimacy and their unspoken desire for connection. In short, your pullback doesn't push them away. It challenges them to wake up to the emotional reality they've been avoiding. And for many avoidants, that internal shift is the first step toward meaningful change. Reclaiming your emotional power and self-worth begins the moment you stop allowing someone else's inconsistent behavior to dictate your value. Breadcrumbing and mixed signals can leave you questioning yourself, doubting your worth, and chasing approval that was never meant to be freely given. But your power isn't lost, it's been misplaced. The first step is recognition. Understand that you cannot control someone else's fear, avoidance, or inconsistency. Accept that their behavior reflects their limitations, not your inadequacy. Once you truly internalize this, the need to seek validation from crumbs begins to dissolve. The second step is boundary setting. Decide what behavior you will and won't tolerate. Emotional power comes from the courage to say enough, not angrily or vindictively, but calmly and firmly. This sends a clear signal: your worth is non-negotiable, and only genuine connection meets your standards. The final step is self-reconnection. Invest in your own emotional, mental, and physical well-being. Pursue interests, nurture friendships, and engage in practices that affirm your value. Reclaiming emotional power isn't about controlling others, it's about controlling your response, protecting your heart, and choosing yourself first. When you do, you attract respect, clarity, and the kind of love that doesn't require chasing. Here's the truth you need to hear today. You are not broken, and you are not defined by someone else's inconsistency. No breadcrumb, mixed signal, or sudden withdrawal can diminish your worth unless you allow it. The patterns of avoidant behavior are a reflection of fear, not a measure of your value. It's time to stop blaming yourself, stop overanalyzing their actions, and stop bending your needs to fit someone else's emotional limitations. You deserve clarity, consistency, and a love that feels safe, not conditional or sporadic. You deserve someone who shows up fully, communicates openly, and honors your heart. The most powerful act you can take today is to reclaim your own energy, protect your time, your emotions, and your boundaries. Stop chasing crumbs, stop justifying their distance, and stop waiting for them to prove your worth. The moment you prioritize yourself, the dynamic shifts, both in your life and within the avoidant. Remember, freedom, clarity, and self-respect are not gifts given by others. They are choices you make. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's courageous. Choosing yourself is the ultimate act of love, and it's the first step toward breaking free from the cycle and embracing the connection you truly deserve.